If you've ever found yourself on any best JDM cars to buy list, then you've heard it. Miata is always the answer. This car is completely unavoidable in the car community, but today we're gonna find out who is this car for and is this car for you. To start, let's go over the pros and talk about why this car is so popular in the first place, and we're gonna kick off this list with driving experience. Driving a Miata is a very unique experience, and it's honestly really hard to explain to somebody that's never driven one. The closest thing I can really compare driving a Miata to is kind of like a go-kart. Everything, all the inputs from the shifter, the steering wheel, the pedals, everything in this car just feels so mechanical, so raw. It's really unlike driving anything I've ever driven before, and for that alone, it's so fun. There's just not many cars that deliver a similar experience to a Miata, at least not in a price point close to what the Miata is. While we're on the topic of driving, I do want to say this is one of the easier manual transmission cars that I've ever driven, and I always do like to recommend this for somebody who's just learning to drive manual or if you're a beginner. The clutch is super forgiving, the gearbox is nice and notchy, and you never really question what gear you're in. It's just a really good car to start learning to drive manual in. Not only is this a really easy car to drive, but it's also a car that's super simple to work on. So if this is your first project car or you're just getting into project cars, this would be super beginner friendly as well. But it also has such a big aftermarket support that if you really wanted to build this car to the moon, you could, and you could stick with this car as well. This car is great for beginners, and it's great for anyone at all who just wants to work on their own cars. Another big plus to owning a Miata and working on one yourself is Mazda was super successful with this platform, selling over 1 million units since its launch. And that being said, parts are almost always readily available, and they're super cheap. So whether you're looking for OEM parts, if you're looking for aftermarket parts, they're super easy to get your hands on. What's nice about owning a Miata is that they're super reliable to begin with, so you shouldn't be having to replace parts too often anyways. And I've even seen examples, a lot of examples, with over 150, 200, 300,000 miles that are still running just fine. Another really cool thing about the Miata, and this one will actually be on the cons list as well, which I'll go over in just a second, but it's super small, which makes the car really easy to maneuver, and you can park it pretty much anywhere. And since it's so small and lightweight, it gets pretty decent gas mileage. So if you plan on using this car as a commuter, then it's definitely a huge plus. Now with that last pro being said, let's move into the cons list, which funny enough is actually going to be the exact same thing that I mentioned on the last pro. So it is really cool that the car is small, but one of the biggest cons about this car is actually its size, and being that it is really small. Where the car size really starts to become a problem is that since it is so tiny, the storage space is really limited. All you really have is these tiny little cup holders, which I will mention are also very inconveniently placed for where the shifter is. When you're shifting, if you have anything in the cup holders, you are going to tend to hit whatever is in there, but you're really limited as far as storage space just to this little area where you can keep stuff. You do have a glove box as well, but the glove box is also rather tiny. So you have this here, and then for additional storage space, a lot of the times what I've done is I use the passenger side footwell, which right now there's not a seat in because I will be installing a roll bar very soon. If you watched any of my previous videos, you know I'm turning this into a drift car. So I removed all the carpeting for now. I will be replacing it. But yeah, so I would normally use that area there if I really need extra storage space, or the parcel shelf, which is again not carpeted due to the roll bar installation that's coming soon. Other than that, you have the tiny trunk, which I'll go ahead and show you right over here. The trunk is not very big as well either, so you just have this little area here. You can fit maybe a couple grocery bags, but there's not really any big items that you're going to be fitting back there. So if storage space is a concern for you, or if you typically carry a lot of things with you, this car might not be the best choice for you. Continuing with interior space, this is again just a two-seater, so if you're somebody that usually has to have more than just one passenger in your car, this may not work out well for you, being that you only can have one passenger at a time. So if this is your only car, you have kids, you have people that you're constantly just bringing in your car with you, this may not work. Now if you are somebody who typically doesn't have passengers in their car, or just one passenger at a time, then this might work for you as long as you don't bring a lot of belongings with you all the time. Then this could be a good option. But yeah, if you're somebody who needs to carry a lot of things, or if you always have more than one passenger, probably not the best idea, at least not as your only car. Sticking with the theme of interior space, I am on the smaller side, so I typically don't have too many issues with this. However, if you are a bigger person and you're a bit on the taller side, you may run into the issues of not really fitting in here very comfortably. And another thing about it is the seat doesn't go up and down. You can only adjust the seat forward and back, as well as the steering wheel doesn't tilt and it doesn't telescope. So the only adjustment you can make to your seating position and the way that it feels to sit in the car is to just slide the seat around and try to find the most comfortable position for yourself. If you are a bit taller of a person, I highly highly recommend that you sit in one and just try to see, do I actually feel comfortable in this car? Because I've had mixed opinions. I have a lot of friends who are a lot taller than me, and a lot of them say that they're comfortable in this car and they drive it perfectly fine. But I have also had a good amount of people who have driven my Miatas and tell me that the car is just way too small for them. The last con on this list that has anything to do with size is actually going to be a safety thing. So if you're driving a car that's this small, you have to keep in mind that you're much smaller than most of the cars on the road. So a lot of the times people actually don't see you, and I've been in collisions where somebody simply just didn't see me. One day driving back home, I was at an intersection and this big Denali truck just bashed right into my rear end in a silver Miata that I used to have, and his reason was I simply didn't see you. So you do have to drive a little bit more defensively when you're in a small car like this, because one, your car's smaller, and if you get hit, you're going to take a bigger impact than the bigger car that hit you, and two, sometimes people, they just don't see you. Continuing with safety, and this is actually one of the things that makes driving a Miata so cool, is that it is such a raw driving experience. But with that comes a couple of things. There's no safety features really to speak of in the car. Some come with ABS, but other than that, you don't have forward collision avoidance, you don't have blind spot detection in the mirrors, you don't have rear cross traffic alert, you don't have any form of assist. So you do have to be pretty cautious when you're driving these vehicles and pay extra attention, because if you make any mistakes in this, then you just make a mistake in this. Outside of safety technology, there's really not much technology to talk about in this car whatsoever. You do have climate control, and the stock car will come with just a regular head unit, which I've swapped out for one with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and that's actually really easy to do in this car, so that's pretty cool. And then you do have cruise control as well. But other than that, the car is super bare bones, which is to be expected. Miatas are over 20 years old now, so you can't really expect much, but that is one thing to mention, is that there's not much technology in these cars if it's something that you're already used to in your current car. And the last con on this list is going to be one that a lot of you have probably been waiting for, and that is, yes, the Miata is slow, but I do feel like that comes with a little bit of pros to it as well. Being that this is slow, you can drive the car really hard on the streets and barely be doing anything over the speed limit. Now, when it comes to a car that's much faster than this, if you're trying to push the car at 10/10, you're definitely going to be doing some speeds that are going to get you in trouble. That being said, the car is slow, so if you plan on doing freeway driving in this car, just know you're not going to have too much passing power, and you might need to change your driving style a little bit just to compensate for the fact that you don't have too much power to pass up other cars. Another thing with these cars on the freeway as well, especially with the 5-speed transmission, if that's the one that is equipped in your car, is on the freeway you're going to be in 5th gear, and your RPMs for the most part are probably going to be somewhere close to about 4,000 RPMs. And if you have an aftermarket exhaust, depending on what exhaust you have, you can hear a lot of drone. Now, if you have the 6-speed like the one that I have in here, then it does solve that issue. However, the 6 speeds are a lot more rare, and it's hard to find a Miata that does have the 6-speed transmission. Now, with all the pros and cons out of the way, to answer the question, is Miata really always the answer? And the answer is yes, but with the stipulations. So yes, I think this is a great and fun platform for really anybody who wants to get into modifying one. However, if you plan on using this as your daily driver and you're somebody that really needs more space than just one seat and the bare minimum of storage space, then maybe this wouldn't be the best answer for you. But if you do plan on daily driving this, it does get good gas mileage, and if you're not somebody who consistently has more than just yourself and one passenger in the car, you can get away with it. But I know for the majority of people out there, including myself, it doesn't make all too much sense as a daily driver, so I'm gonna say this is a great platform if you're somebody who doesn't care about the space, or if you find yourself in a situation where you're fortunate enough to have 2 separate vehicles and this can just be your fun car. And with that being said, thank you for making it this far in the video. I hope this helped, and I'll see you in the next one.